When I was a freshman in high school, I took a hit of LSD in the cafeteria at lunchtime. And while I admit this was a reckless decision, there was some dicey moments, it did turn out well for me. Psychedelics changed my life for the better. And I'm telling you this because I want you to know that I think they're important. I don't think they should be criminalized. I'm one of 12% of Americans who have some lifetime experience with psychedelic drugs. For the demographic of 18 to 25-year-olds, that's more like 1 in 5. Right now, hundreds of millions of dollars have been poured into research, looking into psychedelics as potential treatments or even cures for mental health conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, substance use disorders. And these have driven narratives that have allowed for policy change and drug reform that I think is overdue. But in this case, it's been targeted towards many specific psychedelics at the municipal and county level. And maybe the decriminalization of psychedelic mushrooms, mescaline, and ayahuasca in Washington, D.C. might be one of the reasons why politics has been getting so weird lately. But let's talk about hype, psychedelic hype. The overselling of paradigm-shifting miracle cures to people who are definitionally already suffering is unwise and unfair. And in the context of our really existing mental health and medical care system, for-profit, insurance-mediated institutions enact institutional harm against real people on a daily basis. So when I was thinking about what I would do for a TED Talk, there are many TEDx talks and TED Talks about psychedelics. I thought I could talk about a time when institutions wielded psychedelics and hurt people. And I think it's important that we talk about this because psychedelics are undergoing a process of institutionalization right now. I am talking about MK Ultra. This was a multi-decade, 2-decade-long program by the Central Intelligence Agency, and the project was mind control. Psychedelics were part of a variety of techniques of coercion explored and tested on humans in anti-ethical experiments on people who couldn't fight back. Now, the Central Intelligence Agency achieved this, enacted this, accomplished this with help. They didn't just do it themselves. They enlisted some of the most respected professionals working at and leading some of the most esteemed institutions of their day. Organizations within the military, prisons, hospitals and mental hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and universities. At least 44 of these institutions that we know of were universities, and I'm aware of how image conscious the Ohio State University is. So you'll have to imagine their logo here. In any case, the history of this has always struck me because many of these institutions that had some role in MK Ultra, many of these same institutions today are doing human experimentation with psychedelics, albeit in pursuit of medicine, but I think a message of institutional accountability that really foregrounds This kind of narrative is important. And I think that's important because I've talked to dozens of psychedelic researchers, some of them here at Ohio State University, who are frankly ignorant about some of the most basic facts about MK Ultra. And we were almost entirely ignorant about MK Ultra if it was not for the efforts of people attempting to hold institutions to account. I'm talking about muckraking journalism, freedom of information requests that produced mountains of documents that, after review and sharing with the public, resulted in outcry, congressional investigation. Now's a pretty good time to mention that I'm part of an organization called Symposia. And we have just concluded a year-long investigation in which we combed through thousands of emails, primary documents, and other materials spanning nearly a decade. This investigation describes a tangled web of organizations in the psychedelic field that are influenced and financed by a very powerful group of individuals. Symposia is a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to educate the public on psychedelic science, harm reduction. And we have at times served as an industry watchdog for the nascent psychedelic industry. We have supported people who've been abused and exploited in underground psychedelic contexts, including in clinical trials, exploring therapeutic applications for psychedelic drugs. Now, Symposia has spoken up frequently about abuse and about pseudoscience and about hype, about the worst case scenario for the commercialization of psychedelics. We call it corporadelia, corporadelics. We don't talk about these things because it's our favorite topic, like sexual educators talking frequently about sexually transmitted diseases or violations of consent. We focus on and foreground and talk about these issues because we would like to see less of them in the world. We'd like to see and promote more positive contexts for people to experience psychedelics if they so choose. Our investigation centered on the Psychedelic Science Funders Collaborative, an elite network that coordinates wealthy donors, sets strategy, connects philanthropy with startups and policy advocacy. And they do this in pursuit of acceleration of a commercialization pathway for psychedelics, a facilitated psychedelic industry that they project will have a $10 to $11 billion value in just a couple of years. And in doing so, they have funded and influenced and created a number of organizations. In other words, a small minority, quite powerful, using proxy organizations to obscure their influence and advance their interests. So this is something that was produced as a part of our investigation by my colleague Russell Hausfeld. It's a mind map showing all of the connections that are financially entwined. Each of these nodes is a financial connection or founder or funder organization that has some connection to the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Study And the pharmaceutical company, $100 million pharmaceutical company that was spun off from it recently, Lykos Therapeutics. Many in the space believe that the approval at the FDA of MDMA-assisted therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder will be a catalytic event that will unleash a multi-billion-dollar psychedelic medicine industry. But at Symposia, we have documented a pattern and a history of unethical misconduct, including sexual abuse in the clinical trials of MAPS and Lykos. When this application was put forth before the FDA for review in the year 2000, we all thought it would pass, actually. With all the money and momentum behind it, we thought it was a foregone conclusion. And my colleague Nishay Deveneaux and others organized to participate in an open public hearing to speak to the FDA advisory committee that would rule on the safety and efficacy of this protocol, a drug therapy protocol. Myself, my colleague Russell Hausfeld, my colleague Nishay Deveneaux participated in this open public hearing just to get our perspective out there, get it on the record, and to warn the public. But to our shock, the advisory committee, after reviewing the clinical trial data, saw many flaws. They saw a botched trial with everything from experimental design problems to abuse. Some of the things that we commented on rhymed with what they also saw independently. However, that map that I showed you, almost immediately after that decision, several nodes of it electrified and began a coordinated public relations campaign, multi-million-dollar apparatus that began sucking up the oxygen in the aftermath of this decision. And it needed a scapegoat. It chose Symposia. It kicked off by a pair of Lykos and PSFC-funded veteran proxy groups that penned an open letter saying that Symposia and my colleague Nishay Deveneaux in particular had the blood of thousands of veteran suicides on our hands. And that's when the death threats began. So we wrote the Psychedelic Syndicate, our report, as an act of self-defense. A year and 200 pages and 120 hours of legal review later, we have documented a case study of ongoing medical monopolization in the psychedelic field, as well as pharmaceutical media manipulation. This effort took a lot. But we put it out to the public to set the record straight as this apparatus told lies about Symposia's structure, activities, beliefs, memberships in some of the most prominent news media out there, the New York Times, Wired Magazine, while their allies accused us of promoting terrorism, even committing war crimes. But one of the organizations, the veterans group that penned that particular open letter, the executive director of which was also a board member sitting on Lykos Therapeutics' board of directors. This is called astroturfing in public relations speak. Fake grassroots organizations. And pharmaceutical companies and other industries like big tobacco create AstroTurf groups because they know that grassroots organizing works. And they're willing to spend vast sums of money to distort, misrepresent, and discredit the work of real grassroots organizing because it's threatening to their project. So, I say to you, if anyone has led you to believe that you don't have a voice, that the powers that be are too powerful to challenge, that you can't change the world, well, I happen to care about psychedelics. I imagine you all care about other many worthy causes. And I would say that there is a world to win, but power yields nothing without a fight. So let's fight for a better world. Thank you.